Welcome back to the weekly news roundup, and today we're going to be talking about the respecting other people's privacy, because this is an interesting topic. Because obviously we always get into this idea of respecting privacy, and some of us, like me, a little bit hardcore on the privacy aspect, particularly in the digital life, to the point where sometimes just standing up and exerting your privacy makes you kind of sometimes sound like a jerk. Like, you go into a restaurant, like, what's your name with the order? I don't want to give you my name. Well, and frankly, giving somebody a name is stupid. Let me tell you why. I have a friend who also shares my name. So that's Tom. And we were down. This is a true story. He might jump in here and can verify if he wants to. But I was visiting him, and we go out to a local barbecue chain. And wouldn't you know it, the guy in front of us in the line was also Tom. So there's 3 Toms in a row. We order the barbecue place. They all want to know what your name is, to give you your order, to greet you by name, because, they think that that's going to be quote unquote better customer service. Order for Tom. There's literally 3 Toms standing here. Could you be more specific? You see, an order number is a whole lot better customer service, because I don't think your computer is going to be spitting out 3 order number 101s, unless of course you're in room 101, in which case 2 + 2 = 5 and all world is broken. But that being said, I don't even like giving them my name. I usually give them the same one answer: Joe Bob Henry Bob Squano Jones IV. And they stare at me like I have lobsters crawling out of my eyes. And I've actually had one person actually wrote that down. It was a Starbucks employee. Go figure. But the fact is that taking and exerting your own privacy is a lot of good steps. I use Graphene OS for my phone. I do not use any form of phone apps. I use separate computers for banking and for everything else. I use Linux everywhere. I have my own custom router. I have private DNS servers which filter everything out. I have my own private VPN to exert things. And I can do all of these amazing things, but if I go to my friend who is still on Facebook and they have my phone number in their phone, and they just have that Facebook app on their phone, and they just click the button, boom, Facebook now has my full name, or whatever name they put me in there, and most likely they put in my full name in there, and then my phone number. So now, despite I want nothing to do with Facebook ever, Facebook now has my name and my phone number. Now, fortunately, there's like 4 or 5 of us with my name out there in the world. But the problem is that I didn't consent to Facebook having my contact information. Why is it allowed for somebody else to give my information to Facebook, for Facebook to then come out and have such information? Of course, we also know they do things like create their shadow profiles and things like that. And so I want to jump into the first story here. And this, of course, isn't anything groundbreakingly new. This is back from April. The challenge we have now is that they're rolling out these new Ray-Ban Meta glasses, and they're out for about 6 months now. So we're starting to see a bunch of 6-month reviews drop. In fact, I did actually see a couple 6-month reviews drop just this week. So this isn't too far out of the norm, especially considering all the other stories we're going to be talking about. The problem is that these glasses, they have these cameras and microphones and things, and you can basically walk around with these things and they'll simply pick up anything they see, anything they hear, and it all feeds itself back to Meta. Now, curiously, one of the channels I watch, and he had to go back to a different, I think, is it Levi Hildenbrandt? It's the channel that used to be called Future Proof, and some company wanted to sue him over that or something, and so he decided, hey, you know what, I'll give you the name, I'm not going to fight you, and we'll just change it back to his real name. And so that channel there, they actually covered this topic today, which was quite fascinating. It was on my list since last night, and all of a sudden a channel has some good information. And there's apparently a whole bunch of TikTok and Instagram and other short form video feeds of people walking around with these things. And it poses a serious question. What about all of these people on these monetized videos that didn't consent to that? If I go out to the park and I take pictures of people in the park, that's actually not against the law in America. Now, America should probably put in the same types of laws that EU has, where you can't take pictures of people even in public. But America, it assumes if you're in public, you're fair game. However, America also has laws about paying people for being human models in productions. And so it begs the question, if you happen to be picked up by somebody's obnoxious TikTok video and they're monetizing it, making thousands of dollars, and your name or your face appears in that video, why can I not go and make something similar to a copyright claim, say maybe call it a human model claim against these people, and say they're using my likeness, they do not have permission, I want their ad revenue from that. And you know what? We'll probably solve the problem of morons doing TikTok in public if we happen to exert that type of ability. And I think that that's important, because more and more devices are coming on down the line, like these Meta glasses, that can record everything around them. Now, in the EU, running around with these is a little bit trickier, but here in the States, hey, it has a bright light indicating it's recording, therefore it's okay. No, it's not. If I were a violent person, I might punch somebody in the face and had one of these, but I'm not a violent person, nor do I advocate violence. So please don't do that. But you might tap into that inner jerkiness that I talked about earlier and say, excuse me, I do not consent to being recorded by that thing. Turn it off. And at that point in time, once you tell somebody to stop recording you, at that point in time, you should have an authority to shut somebody down that's recording you. Okay. And I understand that. And I think that that's something they should do. Now, they randomly updated their privacy policy out of the blue. Remember, they can do that anytime. And they actually said down here, Meta will store customers' voice recordings and improve their products without an option to opt out. So you can't even opt out of collecting all that information in the new privacy policy. Now, they are not constantly recording or storing everything around the user. We'll save that for another topic we'll get to in a minute. But they are recording and seeing everything after the person uses the Meta wake word. But now the problem is that they're collecting all this data according to the latest change in the privacy policy, and is, of course, using all this data to train AI, and this comes at the expense of user privacy. A user may not understand that if they use their Ray-Ban Meta glasses out in the box to photograph loved ones, that person's face may find its way into Meta's training program. So this begs a question. If you go over there and take a picture, so if I'm just sitting in a coffee shop, and this is one of those things that channel had on it today, if I'm sitting in the coffee shop and I'm just sitting there working, whatever else, and some moron comes in with these Meta glasses, hey, can I have a seat with you? No. At that point in time, even though they've started it, I can see it's recording. I didn't consent to them walking over and putting a camera in my face. However, now the AI has captured my face and my likeness and will use that to train AI. And that should be 100% against the law. There should be no device out there which can gather data from people without their consent. But I gotta say, we're starting to see some of them. Of course, Louis Rossmann talked about this one today, and it's very rare that I add articles on on Thursday morning after the show's written on Wednesday night. This was a good exception because it tied exactly into what we were talking about. So Louis Rossmann actually mentioned this, and I actually did some research into the company, and they are actually a company that is they're actually about a year or so old, but the reason it just popped up is just this last couple of days, they just threw a $1 million advertising campaign plastering New York City subways across it, and this is what Louis Rossmann's video was on, where people were basically vandalizing all of that advertising, saying AI is not your friend. So the problem here is that friend is connected via Bluetooth and is always listening to everything around you. And they basically say, hey, you have to acknowledge that this thing is perpetually listening and recording and collecting all data of everything around you at all times. So if you walk into the New York subway with this nonsense on, the friend user will actually be collecting all of the data going around. Maybe they'll hear about the next 37-time released violent criminal stabbing somebody. I mean, I don't know. What it'll do with that information, clearly not call the police. That would be racist. I don't know. But the thing is constantly listening, and it's utilizing all this stuff. And you agree to hold the company faultless if somebody sues you over the data that it collects on you. Basically, basically it says, hey, we're this amazing thing that's constantly surrounding your surroundings or constantly recording your surroundings. And if somebody sues you about it, it's not our problem, it's your problem. That's kind of what they were saying in there. In their privacy policy here, it's I can't actually highlight stuff because it's a PDF here utilizing my system, but there was some good stuff in here. Data you provide, through the use of the services and the creation of the account, we may collect your personal information from you directly. This data can include, but it's not limited to, name, phone number, email address, username, account credentials, content shared via online mobile platforms, etc., etc. I mean, everything, all this kind of stuff. Financial information, transaction, biometric data such as facial recognition, voice recognition, any other information. By using the services, you understand the device is passively recording your surroundings, including audio and video content that may contain personal information that is inappropriate, illegal, or unethical to collect. Privacy and video surveillance laws in your jurisdiction may apply to your use of our products and services. You are solely responsible for ensuring that you comply with all applicable laws to the using of our services. Capturing, recording, or sharing audio video content involving other people or capturing other people's feature information may be unlawful and affect privacy rights. And the factor is that people they don't even care about their own privacy, let alone to wear a surveillance tool around their neck so that I have to be surrounded by morons who will collect my data, hand it up to some AI training company, and I can do nothing about it because I'm not the fool who started in on this stuff. Now, before I dive into the next part, I do want to talk about something else I saw today. And this happened just only about 2 hours ago. So it was way too recent to actually add it into the news. But I was searching for what churches I might want to attend this week. And I found a church that seemed reasonable. And so I was poking around their webpage, and they had one of those things. And it was utilizing a service called churchdirectory.com. Now, a few weeks back, I did a video warning you about some of these church data collection programs. This privacy policy, the good news, it was very short. The bad news, it kept contradicting itself. It literally said in one paragraph, we do not share your information with any other organization. But if you want to opt out to us sharing your information with other organizations and third parties, you need to contact us. So do you share the information or do you not? Churchdirectory.com. In another paragraph, now that was what I inputted into the system. Now, what about the families in your churches? So you go to the church, and we talked about this warning sign. It ties perfectly into this. You go in and you just sign that little, oh yeah, this is my name. Oh, it's wonderful to be at your wonderful church. Oh, I'm so looking forward to your, weekly newsletter or whatever you do. And you may not know it, but your admins of that church is going in and placing that onto a centralized database for some big company. And under that setting in the privacy policy, this church organization literally had 2 paragraphs under that part of how do we handle your members' data. The first paragraph said, we do not use this data for anything. We don't access it. We don't look at it. We don't share it. The very second paragraph talks about how all they're doing is sharing all this information with all their third parties who pinky promising not to abuse that data. So are you sharing our data or not sharing our data? It makes me wonder. There's 5 paragraphs in the privacy policy. Has anybody read this? Why is anybody using this nonsense? But this brings us to our next one about not caring about people's privacy. Ring cameras came out with some interesting stuff this week. Because, of course, they're doing this big push for the new Alexa Plus, which now requires you to buy much more expensive Ring devices because they have all this embedded AI stuff. Now, the good feature they have about this is, hey, if you lose a pet, you can, put that up to a neighborhood network of Ring cameras, and using that very dystopian sidewalk crap, they can actually spread that information. And if there's a pet spotting of your pet that you've uploaded, then you'll get alert to it. So that's kind of a neat feature. However, the other interesting neat feature that they have is you can actually upload pictures. Let's see it. You can actually upload pictures of people you like. Okay, users can enroll the faces of their loved ones onto the device, enabling Ring to alert them when it recognizes a visitor. So the idea here, it's not that I showed up at your door and you go, oh, this is a safe person. No, it says users can enroll the faces of their loved ones. So you enroll my face in your Alexa profile with my name and my likeness so Alexa can do a custom greeting if I show up at the door. Here's a custom greeting. Get my crap out of your AI nonsense, or I'm never coming back to your door again. There's a thought. But you notice this theme, it's not anymore that I have to submit my data to this company, to this dystopian company. It's someone else is submitting my data. And if they already have a Ring camera, they clearly don't care about anybody's privacy. So it should be completely illegal for anybody to submit any personal information on any other person to any company's server, which means Facebook should be immediately barred from accessing contacts on a phone. Google should be immediately banned from accessing contacts on a phone. Microsoft should be immediately banned from accessing contacts on a phone because I do not want my name and phone number tied into these services. I've worked really hard to not get constantly bombarded by spam calls, thank you, and I'd like that to remain the same. So users can enroll the faces of their loved ones to enable Ring to alert them when it recognizes a visitor. Customers to, company explained today's blog post that the new feature is meant to empower customers to reduce notifications by triggering familiar people's routine activities. This is basically translated as, hey, if you are living in an apartment complex, because, 2030 is coming soon, we will own nothing, including houses, and we'll be happy, darn it. Okay. And so, you are living in an apartment complex, you put a little Ring camera there, and your neighbor comes out and has to stare at your dystopian nightmare of a Ring camera every single time they leave, and now Amazon is now collecting all the information about when you come and go from your apartment because your neighbor put a Ring camera on it. There's something else that should be illegal. All right. Now you can actually alert him to say, hey, don't give me an alert when my crazy neighbor. Now, you by all means can be aware of how often he comes and goes. Just don't tell me about it. Right? That's really what Amazon is doing here. All right. So Ring has faced criticisms, of course, for its close ties with law enforcement and a history of poor data management. Yeah, that's exciting. And then the familiar faces feature can be integrated into the broader Alexa Plus greeting system, which will enable specific greetings when the camera recognizes a specific face. How wonderful. Then there's the search party. I don't have a big problem with the search party looking for random pets. All right. So, of course, this is funny, too. I did like this part about it. Search party for dogs will launch in November with support for cats. What? Is it a search party for dogs or is it a search party for cats? I don't know. Anyway, how does my cat think about that? I don't know. The cat's up there. I can't ask. But I don't know. Search party for dog rolls out with cats. That's exciting. Well, if this isn't enough, there is a new app that jumped to the very top of the Play Store after only a couple days of coming out. This is called Neon. So TechCrunch was actually one that broke the story, but I actually liked Malwarebytes' write-up of it better. So I'm using Malwarebytes instead of the original source. So this is an app that allowed you to, it literally allowed you to record your audio calls and sell it to the AI companies. They would pay you up to $30 a day to allow it to record your phone conversations. And of course, like every other fly-by-night company, now I looked into the company behind this, and the company behind this is so new. It was just founded, very first corporate LLC documents in July. Came out with a round of seed funding from 2 different companies, and then it promptly rolled out this phone app that nobody heard about until all of a sudden it made it to the top of the list, and a bunch of people were going to be using this for, yet another crowdsourcing thing or gig economy thing. Basically now somebody uses the app and calls you on the phone. You may not know it, but the app's sitting there recording the phone conversation. Now there's actually some interesting news to this. We'll get to that in a moment here. But they just want the voice data. If you ask a friend to agree to talk about it, you can make $900 a month. That seems pretty easy. If both parties are doing it, it comes out to $18 an hour, which is pretty good. They promise that it will never sell your personal data to any third party. However, their entire business model is collecting your data and selling it to a third party. Now, they can say your personal data because they quote-unquote anonymize it as best as you can. Okay, it does not knowingly or intentionally collect personal about children under 16. It will only record your side of the call unless it's with another Neon user. So this is interesting. Neon collects a lot of personal and technical data about you, identifiers, contact details, usage information, payment information. event participation, account activity, testimonials, and other data from third parties. So any third-party integrations are your responsibility. Your personal data is shared with others. You have certain rights, but not absolute rights. You will need to watch out for opt-outs, and the disclosure rights are quite broad. Oh, and by the way, if you remove the app from your phone, they can still collect your phone conversation data if the other person still uses it. You actually have to completely delete your account. Now, of course, as soon as this made it to the top and everybody laser focused onto it, like ID.me style, they actually found really quick, and this was actually TechCrunch basic reporters, which were just playing with this. They actually found that the app was so insecure, they allowed it to access everyone else's data. And after they alerted them to it, then the servers were immediately taken down, so that's good. Of course, the guy didn't want to comment to, hey, what is this dystopian nonsense? No comment, I'm just a young 19-year-old kid looking for a way to make money in the AI era. Hey, kudos to that. He came up with an idea. But this is from TechCrunch. This is their follow-up article. It goes dark after exposing users' phone numbers, call recordings, and transcripts. Now, here's the good news about it. I didn't think it was possible. They were actually able to access the actual phone calls, and indeed, they only recorded the side that the app was using. They actually came through with their promise. We have actual evidence from a data breach that they are actually only recording half the calls, because some security researchers looked at this and said, this might violate wiretapping laws, because I bet that they're recording both ends of the conversation and just recording the transcript of the person making the calls. It actually turns out that the app was legitimately only recording the phone conversation from the side of the person who had the Neon app, which was interesting, but still a little dystopian, because you could actually gain a lot more information depending on what the conversation was about. You could glean more information about who that is on. So they already had thousands of downloads, 75,000 times in one day alone. That was September 24th. And Neon, however, has gone offline for now after a security flaw allowed anyone to access phone numbers, call recordings, and transcripts of any other user. It was very simple. They had the worst security ever, non-encrypted, and they found it just by using one of the basic snitch applications to look at where traffic was coming and going to. And they noticed all these, hard-coded URLs. They were able to just backtrack to phone numbers, backtrack to people, backtrack to stuff. So this is actually what they were actually able to see from the analysis report. And this was literally, that's redacted here, is literally the full open access URL, which means you could basically, if you could figure out what the naming sequence is of this, you could literally create a bot to go in there and scrape the whole thing perpetually. So the audio files contain recordings of just those installed Neon, not those they contacted. That's actually kind of brilliant. That actually worked out. But the metadata contain users' phone numbers, phone number of the person they're calling, so you know who was made, when the call was made, its duration, and how much money each call had earned. So the app was shut down for now. Of course, he comes out by running his flapping stupid gums. Your data privacy is our number one priority. Is it? Is it really? I think if our data privacy is your number one priority, maybe you would have secured it first and done independent security audits before unleashing the thing to the world and then sitting there in a pool of money like Scrooge McDuck. Okay? I mean, yeah. And by the way, they said this was actually the email they sent out to their users. It makes no mention, the email that they sent out to users makes no mention of the security lap or that exposed people's phone numbers, call recordings, or call transcripts. So, get this 18-year-old kid some billion-dollar contract or something to do the next OpenAI or something, because he sounds like a top-notch guy to give us all of this next-level dystopian future stuff that, nobody can really care, Of course, he did not answer questions about if they had put it together any independent security auditing before releasing it to the world. You can probably guess what the answer is. No comment equals nah. That costs too much. We don't want to do that. We wanted to make some money. All right. But if this doesn't get if this gets even more dystopian, this kind of goes to what Louis Rossman's trying to battle with the Austin, Texas flock camera implementation, where these cameras are storing data in centralized networks. Now, I know that the flapping gum morons that are trying to sell the city employees on this stuff are telling them contrary things, but it's very, very clear from the way that flock cameras have been used that it is a centralized database, and that is a big concern. Well, welcome to Kiddo, which is infinitely worse. Kiddo is actually a child care chain that operates in United States, United Kingdom, China, and India. And having operated in all those places, they share one centralized database of all of their information, including their security cameras. And hackers got in there, stole all of it. So 8,000 children, their names, addresses, phone numbers, parents' names, parents' careers, everything else down to the shrimp gumbo is all now in the hands of hackers who released 10 individual profiles of 10 individual kids, including photographs to prove they had the data. And now they're actually also contacting some of the parents. They're basically just looking for a bunch of random ransomware stuff. And so it's a ransomware attack where, once again, we have a centralized database that was taking photographs and too much information. Like, there's no reason to have all this information for people in 4 different countries around the world all stored on one centralized server. No reason. Okay? Here's a fun fact. All of the information about the individual children should be stored only offline at the individual daycare they're at. What are these children flying off to China for a field trip? There's no reason they need all that information in the cloud. Local and a locked filing cabinet. Data security. You know, if somebody breaks in there and steals it, they're going to have a really hard time collecting and copying all that data. You're not going to walk out with a whole filing cabinet full of stuff, you know. Just when you think the extortionist can't sink any lower, along comes a lowlife that manages to surprise you. Stolen sensitive data related from around 8,000 children from a nursery chain Kiddo, which operates UK, US, China, and India. The data group says it stole the names, photos, addresses, dates of birth, and details about their parents or careers, or carers. I guess that's carers, not careers. I thought that was careers spelled wrong. So I guess the people working there. So, okay, the criminals posted samples, including pictures and profiles of 10 children on their darknet. And when contacted by the BBC about their extortion attempt, the group deferred to their actions, claiming we deserve some compensation for our pen testing. Okay. They also said that they started contacting some of the parents. So this brings us into, how does this tie into our main topic here of not caring about other people's data? Well, the fact of the matter is that a lot of these companies are doing things which puts other people's data at risk. Between the third parties that they're using, the individual services, because they're either too lazy, too cheap, too incompetent to utilize some resource that they can do internally. And you think about the number of things that are being outsourced. Like right now, it's a big trend in big corporate companies to outsource human resources. You'd think that's something you kind of want inside, but what it ends up doing is centralizing hundreds and thousands and maybe even tens of thousands of maybe even millions of employees into centralized databases that become too big of targets. And of course, these companies are just trying to operate, oftentimes just on shoestring budgets. They don't have money for security. They're too easy to breach or too easy to hack, and these are kind of fundamental problems. And so you need to be very careful when you're working with companies like this to make sure that you're actually doing things in such a way that they are respecting your privacy, not being flippant with it. Because when the world gets flippant with your data, if you want to get flippant with your own personal data, you have at it. But you want to get flippant with my data, we're going to have a serious conversation. And you probably won't like that because you'll stand there, well, what's so wrong? What do you got to hide? It ain't your information to give. It ain't your information to give. You think it is? Give me your social security number. I'm going to put it on. I'm going to broadcast everybody that I know's phone numbers and social security numbers for my next week live stream. Tune in. No, I'm not going to do that. Obviously, that'd be ridiculous. But there you have it, folks. So let me know about your thoughts about all that. Of course, this is a clipped out stream, clipped out section from our main news stream. I'll have the whole stream down below. So check that link down below. Thanks for watching, and hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.